Hi, everybody. I'm TLobstein, a student in History 325, Immigration and Ethnicity, and I'm here to discuss my primary sources for the writing project for the class. As we've been going through the class, my question has been rolling around in my head as we've learned about each wave of immigration and all of the adversity that they've met and the successes also, and how the country has challenged each wave of immigrants as they've come to our shores in both positive and negative ways, and what the immigrants have brought to the United States. It's great stuff to learn. But one of the questions that keeps going through my mind as we're going through the subjects is basically, why would anybody immigrate? Why would they leave the country that they knew, and maybe they didn't like what was going on there, but they're comfortable with it. Their state of being there was not necessarily good, but it was a huge risk for them to pick up everything and travel to the United States across very large oceans, and make sure that they were leaving everything behind and starting over and with nothing really. And it kept rolling in my head as we're going through this: is why would anybody do this? Obviously, opportunity often overcomes the adversity that that was put in front of them, and it took a long time for many people to become successful, and there were many challenges to it with the nativist elements that were against certain waves that came across, and it keeps repeating itself as we're going along with obviously the Irish, and then the Chinese Exclusion Act was a very rough thing to read about, and then obviously the current situation, which has been in play for a long time with Mexican immigration, Hispanic immigration, more generally. And as and it doesn't seem like we're learning our lessons, but that doesn't change the fact that immigrants still come to the United States, and the reason that is unknown to me. I mean, I can understand the economic issues and why the opportunity is attractive to them, or freedom, or whatever their philosophical bent is towards something. But I want to understand why people came to the United States when we first started, and then over successive waves as time went on, and that's where my primary sources come in. The gentlemen I picked, and they're all white gentlemen, and they all have been successful. They all wrote books. One of them won a Pulitzer Prize for the book that I'm reviewing, and I did that on purpose because I wanted to make sure that I was representing the quote unquote default immigration story of what somebody would say this is a success story for an immigrant. And as I read through these, I definitely have the right ones, because they present, all of them had hardship as they came across, and they worked hard, and they were successful, and they're lucky, and they were able to become successful businessmen or scientists or whatever. And I want to use the primary sources to basically lay the foundation, and then I want to use the secondary sources we have in the class with all the books and the lectures to compare and contrast between the immigrant experience of non-white people, of people that were restricted or excluded or quoted or whatever. So it'll be an interesting conversation I have with myself in the paper about immigration is alluring, and why is it? And so as I'm developing my thesis, it's going to be, this is why it is. And I have some ideas in my head, but I haven't locked the thesis down. But anyway, my primary sources are as follows. My oldest one is a gentleman named Joseph Pickering, who wrote a book specifically about whether to immigrate to North America in general, United States or Canada in particular. Pickering was a farmer from England, and he explored areas throughout the then United States and then Canada, and he wrote about his travels. Basically, he wrote a primer for immigrants whether they should come to North America and decide and be successful there, and how to do that, basically. And one quote that's caught me in his preface was why he wanted to do this, and he was concerned about the privations, quote, the privations and distress of the manufacturing districts in England and the embarrassments of the farming interests, combined with the attention turned towards immigration as a remedy for the evil, unquote, in England. He saw the economic situation, the social situation in England as an evil situation. So he wanted to provide opportunity or teach people how to make opportunity for themselves by coming to the United States. It's written in older language, so it's a little bit difficult to decipher some of the things he was talking about. And as I get deeper and deeper into the book, it becomes more of a, how to farm kind of thing. But I'm very interested in his reasons for immigration, why people should change. So it'll be an interesting foundation of basically the default, the epitome of the early immigration experience, a guidebook per se. Next, I picked a gentleman named Edward Bok, who wrote a book called The Americanization of Edward Bok. He was a Dutch boy when he first came to the United States, and he became very successful. He was the editor of the Ladies' Home Journal for 30 years, very much a successful man. And he started from nothing, and through hard work and determination and luck, and sometimes a little bit of self-serving propaganda, because a lot of the book is interesting because he seems like a kind of like a Forrest Gump kind of character, because he's met basically every important person in the life or the times of that he grew up, from when he was a child until later on, of course, when he was successful, including Ulysses S. Grant and Mrs. Lincoln, who was basically insane at that point, and he goes through it in his book, and it's amusing, but it's also very interesting to find, the little gleanings in the book about why he enjoyed coming to the United States, and the key quote I found so far is, but Edward, he talks about him, writes about himself in the third person, has been started upon his Americanization career and answered, "This is America, where one can do anything if it is honest." Now, is that a little bit of American propaganda from a rich, successful businessman that the immigration experience was positive for him? Of course, but it's also telling to read through it and see what exactly he's been able to accomplish. The next one is a similar gentleman named Jacob Riis, he's Danish, and he wrote The Making of America. And again, the Americanization theme runs through his book. And he was a contemporary, a little bit older, he came later than Bok, but he also was a journalist. He was actually a muckraker who worked as a photographer and writer for magazines and newspapers around the turn of the century in the 1900s. And was a police reporter, and he was instrumental in trying to guide, helping the urban poor and make things better for them. He was successful in his way, and he turned back and helped other immigrants as they came through New York and tried to make their condition a better one. Thirdly, I have a scientist who came from Serbia, and Michael Pupin, and he wrote From Immigrant to Inventor. And this is about he was a teenager, and he actually ended up coming as a late teenager, and he went to college here, and he became a very successful scientist. And his experience is from an Eastern European perspective. So I thought it was good to pull in that perspective away from Western European. Oh, that's the fourth one. I'm sorry. So that's my four. As I continue to research these, it's very interesting to balance these off. And then as I am structuring the paper again, I'm going to go back and get some secondary ones. Because then the question is, well, why did someone from China want to do it? Why did someone from Russia want to come to the United States, or a Jewish person, or whatever it was, and they have the same ideas. They had the same language. They had the same language of freedom, not their home language, of course. So it'll be an interesting prospect as I'm writing the paper to bring this all together and make sure that my thesis is supported. But it looks pretty good so far. Thanks.